Okay, I guess we can get started. We have 30 attendees at this point and 10 people on the panel, most of the building committees here. Let me take this opportunity to welcome everybody and thank you for joining us in tonight's presentation, the community forum about the potential plans for the new high school project, the Watertown High School project. We also have with us several members of the building committee tonight. We have the superintendent of schools with us and the new principal at the high school here. So please allow the presentation to go through it. Scott will go through the presentation fully. We will then recognize people. And if you could please use the raise your hand function, we will recognize you one at a time and everybody will get a chance to speak. And then we will recognize you a second and third time if we need be. But please we will be trying to take the questions as they come in and try to keep your questions very on point, and we'll get them answered for you as soon as possible. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Christy Murphy from the Compass Project Management Team. Christy.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'd just like to update on the feasibility study summary schedule. This is also on our website now. If I could, okay. So where we are is in the preferred schematic report phase of the MSBA feasibility study process. So as most of you who have joined us before know, this is the time where we are studying further the options that were submitted in the preliminary design program report. So we've been doing a deep dive into the options, which this represents here. So analyze short list of options. You can see the green bar. I don't have the control of the pointer, but that's where we are now. And so we have our community forum today. And then in November, the building committee will be voting on the preferred option that we will move forward in this submission. Our submission of the preferred schematic report is due to the MSBA on December 29th of this year. And just again, a quick reminder on the process that these dates are firm. So the way the MSBA process works is if you target a MSBA board meeting, and then you follow the submission deadlines and the pre-meetings, which are the facility assessment subcommittee meetings, accordingly. So we targeted this February 11th, 2021 MSBA board meeting for this submission, which led us to a December 29th submission of this report. So you'll see the options today. Building committee will vote on the preferred option that will move into schematic design after that February meeting. And then schematic design will go through August of next year. And then we'll be looking for the town council to set a special election date. We'll be working through the project scope and budget with the MSBA. We'll be presenting to the community many times throughout this process. So there will be many more forums in the future. And we are targeting the October 27th, 2021 MSBA board meeting, which really that's when we will know the final cost, the reimbursement, and the full design of the project to move forward. So with that, we have here a targeted, just noting the construction start was summer of 2023, but that really is very close at this point. So we'll just leave that as right now very highly estimated. Okay.
Let me just, before we continue, just on the, oh boy, there's something in the question I'm not comfortable with. We did say November, but we may go into late November, early December for a vote. So I don't want to alarm anybody at this point that it is targeted, but it may or may not happen.
Yep. Right. It's really just, as I said last night at the school building committee meeting, it's just keeping us on task because the submission has many, many parts, a table of contents. This will be hundreds of pages of documents that the architect and Compass has to collect and complete. And there's a lot of work to do once the scheme is selected. That's all. We targeted November, but we have room there.
Just one more thing, sorry to interrupt again.
No problem.
Council Lisa Feltner, who's the district councilor from the area, does have to leave at 6:30. She is here, but she has a very important community meeting on another project. And I just want her constituents to recognize the fact that she is, and she will get as much information as we can provide her subsequent to the meeting. Again, sorry, Christy.
Nope, that's perfect. Thank you. We can continue.
So, Mr. Chairman, I will, I'll go through some of the design presentation and some of the work. We do have a summary up front of all the meetings that have taken place and then all of the community forums. This entire presentation was posted a couple of days ago, so I hope that a number of people were able to take advantage of seeing it. And the goal tonight is really to hear a lot of the community and neighborhood concerns. So if it feels like I'm moving too quickly through the presentation, we can always go back and take a look at the presentation, but we want to hear from the community and the neighborhood. And I know that the building committee wants us to make certain that we leave plenty of time to have an open discussion and answer any questions that the community and the neighborhood may have. So there have been 3 building committee meetings since the last time a community forum took place. And there have been a number of things discussed by the building committee over since the last community forum. I'm going to highlight those very quickly. One of those involved a rather detailed look at utilizing the existing high school site and placing a new high school on the existing high school site. And that's what you see in each of these diagrams. This is Columbia Street. This is Common Street coming down in this direction. This is the current Phillips building. This is the current high school building. And these were 4 different schemes that we looked at on behalf of the building committee that involved constructing a brand new building on the existing high school site and slowly working around the existing building in a multi-phase process. The building committee ultimately determined that these options involved too much impact to the school environment, too much impact to the neighborhood. They were much longer in terms of the duration for construction, and they also were very expensive options. So we put all of those on hold for now to focus on other options, but I did want to point out that since the last forum, the building committee has spent some time reviewing the possibility of constructing the new high school on the existing high school site and working around that. So those were option 1 scenarios. And then the building committee dedicated a significant amount of time, and in fact, one entire meeting dedicated solely to a discussion about renovating and expanding the existing high school building as well as the Phillips building to accommodate the program. There were a lot of challenges associated with that we're not going to talk about in detail tonight. Our focus is on some other options tonight, but I did want to point out that there was a very thorough analysis of renovation addition to the existing building that the building committee went through. There were a lot of impacts that were negative associated with that, and we can go back and revisit that at any point in time. But since we're sharing information with the community and the neighbors about current schemes we're studying, tonight we're not going to be focusing on that renovation addition scenario. And then what we have been spending the majority of our time on, particularly in the last month, is a concept for constructing a new academic building on the Phillips site, and then an auditorium, gymnasium, and council on aging facility, along with district administration and facilities on the existing high school site. So what you're seeing here, and these are primarily what we're going to look at tonight, because it's the most recent focus of the building committee, is this idea of utilizing both the Phillips site and the existing high school site, with the very first phase of a project involving the construction of a new academic building on the Phillips site, and then the subsequent phases involving the demolition of the existing high school and the construction of auditorium and gymnasium on the existing high school site, along with a council on aging facility, the district administration building, and then the district facility. So each of these represent those, and we'll be taking a look at them. One of the things that I should emphasize is that no schematic design work has been done thus far. That's next year. And so it can be very confusing as to exactly what is being discussed at this point in time. And what the building committee is really focused on, and the town is really focused on right now, is selecting the site or sites where the building program is going to be located, and then discussing what that looks and feels like and how well they sit on the site, meaning what does the building look and feel like on the site, and is it a plausible solution? So you'll see tonight what appears to be some actual buildings on both the Phillips site and the existing high school site. The purpose of that is not to make a decision about a final design or the appearance of a building or the windows or the color or the exterior. All of that will be next year, but we want to make certain that the community, the neighborhood, the building committee is comfortable with the approach of utilizing the Phillips site and the existing high school site, and what a building might look and feel like in terms of its size and scale on those sites. And that's really important. The building committee has specifically asked us to prepare some images of the building massing from a human perspective from different vantage points, so that it will help inform the community and the building committee's decision about the right size building on the site and the right site for the building. So we've been focusing on the Phillips site and the existing high school site with that in mind. And then just as a reminder, there were other options studied previously. In fact, in the community forum, these were presented, but they involved proposing a building on the Victory Field site or the stadium site. Those options ultimately were determined as not being viable by the building committee, specifically in their September 2nd meeting, because they just displaced too many town amenities. There was too much of an overall loss of open space and field space. And so we're no longer, those options still exist, but we're no longer studying and discussing those with the building committee. And so with that, we are going to focus on showing you what it would be like if a building were to be proposed on the Phillips site in combination with the existing high school site. This, regardless of exactly how the building is formulated on two sites, the building committee is committed to bridging Common Street to ensure that movement between the two buildings does not require the crossing of Common Street by students. So in all the scenarios where we've studied the use of the two sites in combination, they do involve a bridge over, I should point out, an enclosed pedestrian bridge over the Common Street that connects the two proposed buildings. This happens to be showing one of the scenarios in combination and gives you a sense of how much of the existing high school site would be used and how much of the Phillips site would be used. And this is to provide a sense, although we're not doing detailed design on the building layouts, we want to make sure that all of the major pieces do in fact fit within these proposed footprints. So this is just showing you the gymnasium that I mentioned on the existing high school site, the approximate size of an auditorium on the existing high school site, the approximate size of a council on aging facility and district administration facility, and then the approximate size of the academic high school. Now, what do I mean by the academic high school? I mean all of the high school except the auditorium, the gymnasium, and the music programs and performing arts programs. So that's what I mean when I say the academic high school. And we knew that this building would likely be 4 stories. So one of the things the building committee asked us to focus on, again, is giving them a sense and the community a sense of what that building would look and feel like at 4 stories on the existing Phillips building site, and then what essentially a 2-story building with parking underneath would look and feel like on the existing high school site. This gives you a sense of the aerial of that proposed building. And again, I have to put an asterisk on this and say, please don't look at the windows, the colors, the exterior materials. This is not intended to be a design. It's intended to show you the size and scale of a building that would be required to accommodate the high school program and the other programs that I mentioned when using these 2 sites in combination. So that's really the objective of this kind of drawing. And then this is a look at that same model from the other side. We have developed and modeled all of the surrounding neighborhood houses and structures so that you can get a really good sense of those in combination with the proposed size and scale of a building that might go on these 2 sites. And then we've developed some ground level perspective work. In this case, we've just turned off of Mount Auburn Street and we're starting up Common Street towards the school site. This is the bridge that would pass and give you a sense of the size and scale of it as it would pass over Common Street. This is to give you a size and sense of the scale of a 4-story academic building on your left, and then the auditorium and gymnasium building on your right. Again, to give it in context to human perspective or someone driving in a car or walking along the sidewalk. And then this view shown on the map as view number 2 is at the very start of the corner of what would be Columbia Street and Common Street. And the street going down to your right is Spring Street, passing along this particular facade of the academic high school building, and then Common Street continuing towards Mount Auburn Street and passing underneath the bridge. I'm just going to pause for a moment on that because it's good to be able to visualize it and get it in context. Again, Spring Street going down to your right, Common Street passing underneath the bridge, and then this is Middlesex Street coming in right here. This particular view is at the corner of Columbia Street and Common Street. So we're looking down Columbia Street. If the existing high school was there, you would see it right in this location where the auditorium and gym building is, but this is showing a newly proposed massing for the gym, the auditorium, the music and band program, and then a shared entry lobby and what size that might be at a central location coming off of Columbia Street, and then giving you a sense of how Common Street sort of peels down, it changes and it's gradually going down as you're driving down Common Street in this direction and going underneath this bridge towards Mount Auburn Street. And then just in the corner here, you can see where Spring Street would peel off to your right and go past the academic building on the Spring Street side. The map gives you a sense of where that's taken from. This is Columbia Street. This is Common Street coming down and going underneath the bridge towards Mount Auburn Street. This is giving you a sense of if you were coming down Robbins Road. So if you're approaching Columbia on Robbins Road and you're getting near that intersection, you're looking across at the gymnasium, auditorium building. And this is really about just giving you a sense of what that two-story building would look and feel like. It would feel very much, by the way, like the existing high school building in terms of its size and scale. It's about the same length. It's about the same height. It does have an entry lobby. In this particular scenario, an entry lobby that's just to your right if you're coming down Robbins Road, but it gives you a sense of the size and scale of that building in that particular location. And this is if you're right at the corner of Marion Road and Spring Street. So if you were, and this is Spring Street, this is Common, this is Columbia, and we're standing at the corner of Marion Road, which is right here, and Spring Street, which is right here. We're just giving you a sense of what that academic building might feel like in terms of its size and scale across Spring Street to what we have suggested might be one of the entrances to a new building. In that location, you can see this is Spring Street continuing up to your left. Then you can get on Common Street, head towards Mount Auburn Street and pass underneath the pedestrian bridge. We have several variations on the building that are very similar in that they all propose a gymnasium building along with an auditorium on the existing high school site. And then, as I've mentioned previously numerous times, a four-story academic building on the Phillips site. So I'm not going to talk in a lot of detail and spend a lot of time talking to the variations because, as I mentioned earlier, the goal by the building committee tonight is really to give the community and the neighborhood a chance to talk about their concerns, their issues, things they'd like to hear more about, things they'd like the building committee address, things they'd like us to address on behalf of the building committee. So I want to leave plenty of time for that. So this is that, again, a very similar building, slightly different orientation. It's not intended to be judged on the architecture or the design. We're not in that mode yet. We're still trying to decide or have the building committee and the community, the town decide on the site and the right buildings to place on those sites. So same views with this building. Again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them. Looking down Robbins Road, corner of Marion Road and Spring Street. Looking up Common Street, the two buildings and the bridge between them. This particular version happens to have a more narrow face along Spring Street, but that's just one of the subtle differences. This particular version happens to come out to the corner of Columbia Street and Common Street, but these are all just subtle variations that we wanted to test. The main objective, again, of all of these sketches and diagrams is to give the building committee and the community a sense of size and scale of the buildings on these sites. I would point out that the building committee has had a lot of discussion around drop off and pickup and arrival to the school and parking. In all of these scenarios that utilize the Phillips site along with the existing high school site, the large majority of the parking being proposed would be underneath this building that's on the high school site. the town's master plan makes a case for shielding parking from public view as much as possible and doing that lower level parking underneath buildings as a strategy. And so no matter what the scheme is, if it involves these two sites, we've always talked about tucking the parking underneath this building. And then we've talked about the fact that in this kind of scenario, with Columbia Street being a fairly long street in terms of the frontage of the academic and the physical education, the gym and the auditorium, the idea that this would continue to be a primary drop-off and pickup area for students, but that this scheme collectively might allow us to spread drop-off and pickup and particularly arrival for students, whether they're walking, being dropped off or driving, to a lot of the surrounding area, because we've kind of expanded the campus in many ways by utilizing both sites, and that maybe that can help with some of the congestion in the area. We're not to a point yet where we would do a detailed traffic study. We have some early traffic information, but we want to make sure we settle on the sites before we do some traffic study. And quite frankly, with the current situation and the lack of daily trips to the school, a traffic study wouldn't be accurate either. So we want to make sure that we have an active campus before we conduct that kind of detailed analysis. But all of those are issues that the building committee is discussing surrounding the use of these two sites. So I just wanted to mention them. The other thing that I want to point out is in discussing the parking underneath the building on this side, we've talked about the fact that there would be entry and exit to that parking area at the corner of Broadway. And we've also talked about the fact that there would likely be at least an exit, possibly exit only, out of that area onto Common Street. And these are all the same views, again, with slight massing variations that I don't want to take a lot of time on, because we want to make sure we have plenty of time to hear comments, suggestions, etc. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we're happy to go back and talk about any of those in detail. Certainly, as per the building committee's direction, we want to leave plenty of time for the community to comment on their concerns and input.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask everybody to use the raise your hand function. And there are some questions in the Q&A, and we will get to some of those. Some of the rest of them will be on the frequently asked questions portion of the website once we get a clearer answer of them. So please raise your hand. We will recognize you one at a time and allow you to speak, and you'll have to unmute yourself. We'll start with Peter Santola.
Thank you, Council President Sedaris. Pete Santola. My brother Quinn graduated class of 70. I class of 68. My mom went to Watertown High. And I have a boy, Philip, as a junior, and a daughter, Leanne, as a freshman. Scott, again, thank you to you and your team for a nice presentation. I feel this is the best option. And congrats on the Hosmer and kind of construction. Two kind of thoughts. General, I'm glad we're going to take care of our seniors, because I might be there someday. Parking for seniors, I think when we get to the point of, finally deciding what it looks like, I think we really need to be cognizant that parking for seniors needs to be close. So that would be a comment for our seniors. I think that's a very important component. And then number two, I've noticed you have 4 stories on the academic building, but 2 stories on the athletic building. And if there was another amenity that the town wanted to put on, could you put it on the two-story building that's now slated Athletic Council on Aging? Could you put 4 stories there if there was something else that the town felt important to have a new one? Thank you.
It's certainly possible. It's more complicated and expensive to place additional stories over the gymnasium than it would be, for example, over the Council on Aging, because of the significant free span without any columns that exist in the gymnasium. So the structure of the roof of the gym would have to be quite extensive to be able to accommodate those additional stories. But it's physically possible, just to answer your question.
Okay, before I recognize the next person, because some people have first names, some people have initials, we do ask that you give us your full name and address, please. If we were in a meeting in a room, we would be getting everybody's name, address, and email on a piece of paper. So I'd appreciate, please respect, so people can know who's on speaking. The next person we'll recognize now is Elodia.
I don't have there's no ability to allow her. Oh, there you go. There you are.
Sorry, I had to mute 2 things.
Great.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I have several questions.
Please
Number one,
identify yourself for the record.
sorry, my name is Elodia Thomas. I live on Marion Road. First of all, I'd like to know how many of our residents are participating in this meeting tonight, because I feel at a disadvantage when I can't see my neighbors there or just know how far the word has gotten out about this meeting. 2, I'd like to know how many school committee members are here, because just for the record, the school committee site has still not been updated. Eileen Jesus-Balzer is still listed as a school committee member. David Stokes has been on the committee for quite some time. This concerns me. Those are 2 critical issues if we're talking about a community forum. The biggest thing that I need to see in this plan right now, I've walked this every single day in the last week for the human perspective. And I would like to see an overlay of the buildings that are there now from an aerial view to get a size of the scope of these buildings, and then also from the street view. Because I think the people that are living on Marshall Street and Spring Street are going to have a huge wall in front of them. Also putting that road up the side of, if you're facing Russell on the left, the people that are over there are going to have cars, even though it's an access road. The human perspective is not well represented here. The biggest issue, I wrote a letter to this committee on February 23rd, never got a response, about asking questions about right-sizing this building in terms of the educational programming, analyzing the space summary in terms of MSBA standards. We are not building a monument here. We are building a school. And I'm very, very concerned that it keeps getting bigger. I don't get my questions answered. We're setting off on design standards for what? I still don't know. And this community is not stupid. While they certainly want a new high school, they want it to be a reasonable high school. And we're not building the Taj Mahal. I've asked again and again for hard parking numbers in terms of administration, school administration, then the, in terms of the teachers and the high school, then the overall administration, and then the senior center. I've gotten no numbers. The other thing is that the senior center presently has a little patio in the back of their building, which people enjoy because they paint out there, they exercise out there. I've seen different plans where the senior center is stuck to the side of the building where the parking is coming in. If the senior center is really going to go there, I believe it should be facing the green space that goes towards the cemetery with some kind of patio space. I feel that, honestly, I know Scott says this is just massing. Right now, I think I'm looking at some upscale prisons. I'm really very upset by what I'm seeing. I don't see any design context at all. And I just have to tell you, this is, these people that are surrounding that building, is that really what we need in Watertown? Because until we get the spacing right, until we know those numbers are right, I don't know what the devil we're designing. And I'm very, very concerned. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I start by saying how many participants are here?
Yes, please.
Okay, we have 40 community attendees and plus 14 panelists. That's the current numbers.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please. Yes, ma'am.
excuse me, I just want to really address the issue. School committee members, because when we had the meetings that we could see each other, I could see who was attending. I don't know if they're at home watching right now. I sign in, even if I silence myself. But I really want to know where the school committee is on all this, because they also represent the community aside from those kids that are in the school. And this is critical. This is a big, big number for Watertown. Thank you. I apologize for interrupting.
Thank you. Right now, Chairman Ports is on as a panelist, and David Stokes is also here. There may be others at home. I don't know. They may be registered under a different name, but those are the names that I see right now. Let's recognize now Catherine Kopp, please.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Kathy Kopp from Barnard Avenue. And I don't know how construction is done these days, but as a member of the neighborhood, I just wanted to express my concern that air conditioning units and other noise producing machines are not just shoved up to the roof without concern for how they look, and especially the sound that comes forth. So any machine units, I hope that you'll apply the most modern noise abatement techniques.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. And one other point, just on Elodia's point, I was just concerned about the number of residents here tonight because it's been a rather big week. And my only, I know that in the early meeting, there were probably over 100 community residents. Now we're down to, say, 40. And I was just concerned, out of the 40, how many are from the senior center group, because that might, there may be 10 from the senior center and 30 from the community. So I just wanted to get kind of a picture of who outside of the, the workers the worker bees are attending.
Thank you. Scott, did you want to touch on the air conditioning stuff?
Sure. Just briefly, one of the interesting things, the Watertown has really been pushing to get the elementary schools to the LEED gold level. And it appears we're going to be able to do that, which is a very, very high level of LEED, which involves environmental stewardship, green design, energy efficiency. But one of the other things that LEED involves is a series of acoustic requirements, both inside and outside the building. So this building, assuming that the building committee is going to adopt all the same standards that they did for the elementary schools, will have a layering of a lot of different acoustic requirements outside the building. And one of those is to make certain that the noise levels are reduced to a very, very low level. So I think we would do that anyway, but certainly with the LEED requirements, all of those things will be taken care of. We have to hire an acoustical engineer to evaluate every single piece of equipment, where it's placed and how it's placed outside the building. So that will be a real high design priority when we get to that design process.
Great, thank you.
I will also say that as chair of the committee, I intend on trying to mimic exactly what we did for the 2 elementary schools, which is zero net energy and LEED Gold. So, I don't think we want to deviate from that at this point.
Thank you.
Tom Lewis.
There we go. Hi, my name is Tom Lewis. I'm on the board of the Senior Center, and I'm a Watertown resident. And I live close to, within a block of Hosmer School. And so I'm very excited about the construction potential for both Hosmer and this school and the high school. Just a couple things. As a citizen, I look at every building for its full life. And I would like for us to realize that this building, while we're in 2020 now, we're really thinking of 2070 or something like that. Because whatever the building looks like, it's going to be around for a very long time, as we've learned from some of the other existing buildings. Couple comments I want to make. I certainly support LEED involvement in every way, and I see how important that is to be involved in the design from day one. I'd also like to see, and I'm jumping the gun because I think the work that you've done is really quite well thought out, and I guess they're just, I've also driven on Storrow Drive, and so I'm concerned about keeping the pedestrian bridge high enough that it doesn't get Storrow Drived into by some large vehicle. But in terms of the planning, I also would like to see, I'm asking that as you develop from here on, that you begin showing usage of the surface space, because, I don't think any of us would like to see just sort of a no person's land out there with a bunch of grass that's, just there, because people are either going to want to use it, or I hope they want to use it. So I would like us to be thinking of creative uses that will appeal to the students and their friends and family and the faculty and so forth. I guess I don't have anything more to say than that. I'm certainly interested in the senior center development as it comes along. I know it's much too early to be thinking about that because it's accessory to the high school. So I'll just turn my mute back on and listen to whatever comments others have to say. Thank you very much for the opportunity to see what you're doing and to participate in this design process.
Thank you. Anne Marie Clunan. Anne Marie, are you able to?
Unmute.
There we go.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Phone computer coordination, sorry. I want to echo some of the things that Peter and Elodia, as well as Tom, said about the Senior Center. I think we have a really big opportunity to expand and make that something that's integrated into the world that's the high school, but this is really not just a school building when we're adding the Senior Center and the counseling for aging and what we can offer to the team. Sorry. That's part one. The second part, I'd ask if Scott last night at another meeting had talked a little bit about the underground parking and the opportunities for the underground parking. And I really think that for the neighborhood, what the potential is for that underground parking to relieve some of the stress when there's a school event, an athletic event, for the neighborhood to have that underground opportunity is really a benefit to this project as well. So Scott, can you touch base a little bit on that and the number of spots and what we could do?
Sure. And I can make a little bit of comment about the Council on Aging too. I know that we've, in each of these scenarios, we move the program parts around a little bit, but I just want to point out in this particular scenario, we are showing the Council on Aging right on the open field space or lawn that would be created between the building and the property line for the cemetery. So some development of that is presumed for both outdoor student use. And the building committee did at one point in time take a look at a number of possibilities for that space. Right now we're studying massing, so it doesn't show up on here. But this is also showing how some surface parking could be created to serve the Council on Aging, and some drop-off could exist along with that parking. And then what you see here is the opportunity to come off of the street and into that parking area that's tucked underneath the building. And that's why you see the ground slowly going up while the building is continuing underneath. There's parking underneath this. We have said that depending on the desire of the community and the building committee, and certainly the entire town, we could accommodate as many as 200 spaces underneath this building, but there's been no specific program set for how many of those we would actually place in any final design. But that's where that parking area would exist. And you can see this is all very conceptual. It's not intended, again, to be a design solution, but we're just trying to show enough in this concept model that you can see that the parking gets tucked in up underneath this building, and that some surface parking could potentially be developed in this area of the site.
Thank you. And the only other comment that I would make is, to Peter's point about maybe there's opportunity to have something else there, I would just throw out what a great opportunity to have a new location for the food pantry that didn't have limited intake problems like they do now, and be able to serve the entire community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Harvey Steiner.
Harvey Steiner, 18 Marshall Street. First of all, I think we need a new high school, and I think the concept is great. My concern has to do with the size of the building on Marshall Street, that fronts on Marshall Street. A 4-story building right there next to the residents that are closest to Mount Auburn Street. And I live right across the street. I think that, I just think it's too tall, and I would like it pushed back. I think that part could be less than 4 stories. The Phillips School is now, I think, 3 stories. So that part on Marshall Street is one problem I have. The second thing is that the parking lot that's there now, even although it be tar, or it's still an open space. And so this is going to affect all the houses on Marshall Street, the light, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the other thing is that I know this is a concept and for mass, et cetera, but I think that if you're going to do something in the historic district, then it should at least reflect the character of the historic district. I have a vested interest in that. So that's my concerns. Thank you, and I appreciate everything you're doing.
Harvey, thank you for your comments, and we do have every intention of speaking to the Historic Commission and the Historic District Commission.
Great, thank you.
Andy C., you please identify yourself fully and state where you live, please.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Andy Campagna. I live on Robbins Road. I'm with the Bike Pedestrian Committee.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. My thoughts. So as we go through the evaluation process, I guess I'd like to see consideration of alternate transportation to be integrated into the evaluation process. Looks like we're already beginning to integrate the drop-off and pickup experience. I think it's important to consider transit, walking, and the biking experience as well. And along with that, we should also be considering the convenient availability of storage and shower facilities. The idea would be to minimize any obstacles to students or faculty adopting alternate forms of transportation. So my question is, what steps have been taken or should be taken to move in this direction?
That will also be driven very much by lead on both the Cuniff and the Hosmer. We had to evaluate the town-wide plan for transportation with a specific focus on bike paths. And then we had to include and incorporate, just as you mentioned, bike storage, shower facilities. They have criteria for that to make sure that we're addressing that. So it will be incorporated into the design process. And to meet a level as high as LEED Gold, we'll absolutely have to address and achieve all of those things.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, Laura Siegel.
You're unmuted, Laura. Oh, just muted again.
Can you unmute yourself?
There you go.
Laura? Laura? Okay, I guess we'll come back to Laura.
Yep.
Let's go to Matt Petrie, please. Matt.
There you
Can
go.
you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, sorry, I'm Matt Petrie. I live at the corner of Common and Orchard Street. First, I just wanted to say I appreciate all the effort that went into this. And I think this is great that we can see this in 3 dimensions and we can see the massings. I'm an architect, and I think that these are appropriately massed for a school, for the neighborhood. I think it's phased well, the way it's been planned out. I think it would be helpful to work on Spring Street and Marshall Street. If there are ways of mitigating the size of the academic building, I think that would be helpful. I do not agree that this building should be some kind of historic pastiche because it's in a historic district. I think it should be a contemporary building and of our time. I'm not saying it should be some crazy glass and steel thing, but I don't think it should mimic some historic building in the neighborhood either. I also think the layout is great in terms of the athletic and the auditorium being across the street from the academic building. I think there's a great opportunity for that whole building on the other side where the current building is to have like another life outside of the academic day and be more public and used all the time by the town. So that's really all I wanted to say. I appreciate all the efforts and look forward to more meetings.
Thank you. Let's try Laura Siegel again.
She is unmuted.
Laura? Okay, let's move on. We'll come back. Elodie, I have to skip over you because I want to give everybody another chance before I come back. Franklin Varinhos. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name.
No, that's very good. Hi, thank you. So I'm Franklin Varinhos. I live at 39 Marshall Street. It's the house that's right next to the car park right now, and would be right behind the academic building. So if I understand correctly, I see that there's maybe several options that you're currently considering in terms of the layout for the school. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And as part of, I guess, in deciding, so those are all on the table right now, I guess, those options. And in order to, the process, I guess I'd like to understand better the process for, arriving at a decision on a particular, on one of the options, and whether that would include, of evaluating the impact to the residents that are directly impacted, such as myself. I'm thinking in particular in terms of the effect on the lighting to my house and the noise and those kind of factors.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just address part of that. The purpose of having this kind of open community forum is to get feedback. And we had the building committee meeting last night, and certainly we heard at the building committee last night that there was concern about the scale of the building on Marshall Street and on Spring Street. So we're not surprised that we're hearing those kinds of comments echoed again. I don't think that it's not as if we're putting these options forward and telling the building committee, or the building committee is telling the community, pick one. We're putting these options forward to get the kind of input that we're hearing from the residents on Marshall Street and from the surrounding neighborhoods, and likely we'll be morphing these into a future massing that attempts to address all of those concerns. But we'll be continuing to hold building committee meetings and community forums to talk about those adjustments and continue to get feedback until the building committee is confident that the proposed building represents the town, the neighborhood, the community, and Watertown's best interest.
Okay. And the residents would be part of that process along the way.
Yes, Frank, and I will just say that in speaking to some of the members of the team today, we may have a meeting and make sure that, because there are a lot of people that aren't tuned into this, we will do some leafleting of your couple of streets there and present an updated document, an updated vision to the neighborhoods right abutting these buildings before we continue on with the building committee.
Right. I'm just, also looking at the space between Marshall Street and Columbia Street. I'm just wondering, there seems to be a lot more space between Common and Columbia Streets, and I was wondering why that wouldn't be the site for the bigger academic building and reserve the between Common and Marshall Street more for the Council on Aging or where it is now. Just wondering, why you're thinking about putting the academic building where it currently is on the option 3D2.
Sure, it's an excellent question. In some of the earlier options under scenarios, option 1, tonight we're not talking about them, but the committee did, what's not showing up in this particular image or any of them is the existing high school occupies this entire site. And when we presented the kind of lengthy, complicated phase construction that would be required to demolish the existing high school and simultaneously attempt to construct more building on this site, it was a very lengthy, expensive, disruptive project to not just the existing high school, but the entire neighborhood. So ultimately, for a lot of reasons, that kind of scenario was ruled out. And then it's a little misleading because this, I don't know if you're referring to it, but this, what appears to be a large green space here along the fence and then along a common is all the cemetery. So that's certainly not available. And then,
Sure.
as I mentioned, this site is almost fully and completely occupied by the current high school. The only reason we can develop a scheme like this is because we construct the new high school and get it completely ready to occupy prior to going over and demolishing the existing high school and constructing this gymnasium and auditorium building.
That would answer my next question, which is where the students going to be during construction. So they would still stay at the current where the school is currently until the new building is built, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, those are all the questions I had for today. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
And I look forward to being involved in the process. Thank you.
Again, thank you for joining us. We'll go to Kristen Patterson, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks for having this meeting tonight. And I guess I just want to weigh in.
Kristen?
As a parent of 2 children. I live on Fitchburg Street, and I have a student in the middle school and one at the Lowell right now. I also teach in a nearby community at a high school. So my perspective is more toward the academic building side of things and how it's going to be used. I really do have significant concerns about a 4-story building. In every illustration, it really looks like it's shoved into a small area where the portion of the building on the other side of the street has quite an expansive area for athletic facilities and for the Council on Aging and district admin facilities, which were not part of the original MSBA funding approval. So I just feel like what was supposed to be a high school project has now turned into something that is, the high school is kind of getting a short shrift. I teach in a 3-story building, and it is very, very difficult to get from one class to another. And in between classes, I change classrooms as a teacher, and that's in a 3-story building. So imagining a 4-story building. I also wish there was no illustration from the perspective of Marshall Street, seeing what a 4-story building would look like next to some, much smaller residential buildings. And I just don't understand why. I'm not yet convinced that the numbers and the time that would be required are so drastic as to overrule putting the academic building on the larger parcel of land. I guess I would want to understand, you're talking about 200 underground parking spaces, and I think that's quite expensive. So I'd be curious to know how that affects the bottom line. And also, what part of the Council on Aging facilities and the district admin facilities are going to be paid for by the MSBA? And also, when is the next community meeting? Because I only saw this publicized today on Facebook. I hadn't heard about it until today, and then realized it was actually happening this evening. So I think there are probably a lot of people who don't know. And I understand about the timing and the cost, but I really hope you investigate more the possibilities of putting the academic building where it is now using phased construction so that it would not need to be a 4-story building, and seeing what opportunities you could use to put the gym near the side that's the Common/Marshall, just investigating other possibilities, because I know in the short term it would be done faster, but we're looking at this building lasting for 50 years, right? And so down the line, it might seem like a mistake to put students and teachers in such a small space. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just respond to a couple of those things, because they're good comments, and some of them are things the building committee has discussed in detail. We are certainly evaluating the possibility of making the academic building less prominent on the Phillips site, and attempting to reduce the scale of it more. With regard to building on the existing high school site, we have a very detailed analysis of that we could certainly roll out to the community or anybody who wants to see it. We reviewed it with the building committee, but just in really big picture sort of swipes, the cost premium was about $35 million on a $200 million project for the extended phasing. The duration of the project was over 5 years versus a 3-year project under this scenario. And then the logistics of moving the students around to the different portions of the building were complex. The existing high school building includes about $10 million worth of asbestos So we had to talk about a very complex phasing of the removal of that while trying to keep students in the building and at the same time demolishing part of the building and constructing new. So there was a very detailed discussion about the complexity of building on the existing high school site that we could go back to at some point in time in the future if necessary. And then on the Phillips site, we certainly are studying the possibility of reducing the scale of that building, and even possibly, as some building committee members suggested last night, moving some of that program that we've now got on the Phillips site over to the existing high school site.
And could you speak to how much of the district facilities and the Council on Aging will
Yes,
be paid for with MSBA funds?
absolutely. Sorry. The Council on Aging, district admin, and the facilities would not be part of the MSBA grant reimbursement program at all. The MSBA's grant reimbursement program is for the high school only. That program for the high school is about 235,000 square feet. And then the current program that we're carrying for the other three facilities is about 40,000 square feet. But it would all, that 40,000 square feet would all be non-MSBA grant reimbursement money.
Okay, Tom Lewis.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just looking at the overall plan, and I don't know how to say this exactly, but in the future, the 50 years going forward, I have a feeling that education is going to occur differently. And what I'm seeing in front of me feels like, and I'm sorry if I sound rude, but it feels sort of like a 1960s design high school. Is that true?
Well, I think the reason for that is we're seeing nothing but a massing model. We do have more detailed development of the floor plans that could potentially fit within these masses. And if we were to talk about those, you would see that we're introducing flexible academic commons areas where interdisciplinary classrooms are grouped around those commons areas. And for example, the reason this particular scheme happens to break itself down into these subcomponent buildings is because this represents 3 academic teams on the second and third and fourth level on this side, and 3 academic teams on the second and third and fourth level on this side. And so we are thinking about the way learning will take place in the future. We're just not talking about it that much yet until we settle on a site and a building size and scale. But we do certainly have a lot of educational design to kind of back up and make certain that if the town elects this kind of massing and location for the building, we can roll into integrating and talking about how we can create a 21st century model for education inside that.
Yeah, thank
as
you for that
well.
information. A thought I have is, my intuition is there ought to be a major academic function on the, east side of Common Street. In other words, the area where you have the athletic facilities, auditorium, Council on Aging, and so forth, seems like a wholly different function. And I think in 50 years, education is going to need to be so different from how we conceive of it now that there needs to be a major academic component there, not just a bunch of low-use spaces that get animated in the recreation times.
I think that's a fair comment, Tom. And What we haven't shown in any of these models, but we've talked about a lot, is outdoor learning and how that gets integrated with academic learning and where that occurs. And on the existing high school site, we've got a lot of topography change. So in some of our analysis, we've shown some outdoor amphitheaters, we've shown some outdoor instructional classrooms, but we've kind of pulled all of those out for the purposes of just these massing models. But I think you're right about some of those components being a big part of education in the future. And I think that as we start to refine the design, you'll see some of those components start to appear. And I think as we consider and evaluate moving program elements that are currently on comments on in the academic building on the Phillips site to the existing high school site, you may see some of those program elements that you're describing start to appear on the existing high school site.
Yeah, that feels good to me. That feels more robust in terms of, first of all, use of the space. And I know it's an expensive proposition, use of the space, but I'm also thinking the educators 20 or 30 years from now are going to have ideas that I certainly can't conceive of. And I can't imagine they're all going to want to be stuck in a box. Thank you for listening to my my thoughts on that, and I'll look forward to the development of this. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you. Cooper Petrie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. My name is Cooper Petrie. I live on the corner of Orchard and Common. I'm actually a senior at Watertown High School right now. And from a student's perspective, this layout looks pretty cool. A lot better than the high school right now. And, you know, I love it a lot. But unfortunately, yeah, I won't be able to actually learn there. But I just had some questions about you guys using student input in the design. Do you think at any point of the design you're gonna use student input? And I also have another question about using like sustainable energy sources, because I know you guys decided not to go net zero, but I was wondering if you're going to use like solar panels or anything like that, just to make some clean energy. That's all I had to ask. Thank you.
Okay, I will say that we did say, I did state a few minutes ago that we are trying, or we will attempt, or we will make every possible, everything we can do to mimic what we did at the two elementary schools that have a net zero LEED gold building. So that, the other thing on the, I want to recognize either Dee Dee or Joel on the student input part, because I think that could be an important tool here. And I appreciate Cooper bringing his perspective, even though he won't be able to join us. And then Scott, if you have anything to add. So I don't know if Dee Dee or Joel want to touch on what we can do for student input.
Sure. I can certainly say that up to this point, we've actually had a lot of student input in terms of the visioning. It was actually several students that served on the visioning team, which began meeting last fall, and helped form the educational plan. And I did want to mention, even to the speaker before, on the high school building project website, you can find the educational plan, where I think if you start looking, you're going to see a lot of very innovative approaches to teaching and learning that allow for flexibility for the future. And I know that as the months progress, we're going to get more in detail about that educational plan. But I think as we start to go a little bit deeper in the design, then yes, we certainly want to continue to have student input in terms of what we do within the building, and we'll seek out those opportunities along the way, for sure.
Thank you.
And just to Cooper's question on photovoltaics, the net zero Hosmer building, as it's being constructed, will have about 1 million kW of annual energy production, which covers all of the energy usage for the Hosmer. The Conniff will have about 500,000 kilowatt hours of energy production annually, which will cover all of the energy needed for the CONUF. And then even though we haven't started any kind of detailed analysis on the high school because it's too early, we don't know the size of the building or exactly how it's going to be oriented on the site. We know that a building of this size will need about 3 million kilowatt hours of energy production annually. And we know approximately how much photovoltaics will be required to produce that. So not too long in the future, once we settle on an actual design, we'll be developing that further with, as the chairman pointed out, a goal of net zero.
Thank you. Barbara Ruskin.
Should just unmute.
Barbara, can you unmute?
There we go.
Barbara? Barbara? Okay, I guess we'll come back to Barbara. Let's go to Anne Marie Gagnon, please.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Anne Marie Gagnon. I'm the director of the Council on Aging Senior Center, and I want to extend my thanks to the committee and the architects for all of the renderings and that I've seen so far. And I appreciate all of the folks who are on this call, particularly the older adults who have made comments tonight. I particularly agree with the points about parking and particularly the exterior parking. I particularly like the option 3D2 model where the senior center actually faces the green space. To Elodia's point about having outdoor, also flexible space, and to Tom's point, you know, the reimagining of what the senior center is going to be, not just 5 or 10 years from now, but 15 or 20 years from now, and the different types of things we'll be able to do. I think having access to that, you know, open facility type space is something we really want to think about, in addition to the parking, not only for seniors, but also for our senior shuttle. Drive-up parking is desired. However, at least right now, many seniors who come are very active and do drive. So I think parking is paramount. But again, thanks to everybody for what they're working on. We're really excited to be a part of this project, and being combined within the high school facility makes Watertown even that much more forward in its age-friendly environment, and what we're moving forward towards. You know, having what's good for those who are young is also good for those as we all grow old together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne Marie, and thank you also again to the seniors who have joined us that may or may probably don't have, many of them probably don't have kids at the high school, so, or they will be attending the high school. Let's try Barbara Ruskin again. Barbara? Barbara? Barbara?
She doesn't seem to have
Okay.
any audio now, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. Yeah.
Let's move on. We're going to go to Elodia and then go to some of the Q&A that's been asked. Elodia. Welcome back. Elodia, can you unmute yourself?
Yep,
Yeah, I unmuted myself. I'm muting my
Sure.
TV because I'm watching the TV. Thank you. I'd just like to come back to a couple of people's comments because they were really quite good. Andy about the bike ped committee, which I was chuckling a little bit because we set the clock back for the senior start time because they need sleep. So I don't know how many are going to be cycling to school in the morning and taking showers. I know as a kid, I was always in my bed as long as possible. I'm a night owl. I really also agree with Matt Petrie. I believe that we should have a contemporary building of our times. That's exciting because I think that juxtaposition can be really great. But I'd like to take a couple of lessons of what we've learned from the commercial development in town. I went to the 66 Galen Street meeting last week where they pushed it back so it wouldn't overwhelm Galen Street and gave it some really cool edging. And I think we have to pay particular attention to the abutters all around the school. Nobody has really touched on the traffic and the drop off on Springfield Spring Street that's being proposed. And what really throws me in these drawings is we do not see the stoplights. One is at the corner of Spring right there and Common. We don't see the Common in Mount Auburn. We don't see the clutter of all the stop signs and everything. So this presents a very soft, lovely picture that's totally untrue. We do not address the issue of kids coming to school and driving. And what happens on Marion Road, which gets quite narrow with parking on both sides so that you cannot negotiate the road to drive it, then you get in also the issue of how do you enter Spring Street because of the traffic there. So I really think the whole traffic thing has to be seriously addressed. I'm very much Kristen, I'm sorry, I think it was Patterson. The 4 levels, I cannot say this enough. I really want to know the numbers that we are planning for, because as I understand it, I believe MSBA is 21 students per classroom. I urge you all to read the educational plan. When you see the numbers of kids, the average numbers of kids that we have in classes, it's quite low. And I want to know what we're planning for. People say, oh, we like to keep it at 18 in Watertown because that's what we like. Well, who is the we? Because it's the taxpayer that will be paying for this. And as a baby boomer, I had 30 plus people in my classes. So this is becoming a little iffy for me. I would like to speak to Tom about his ideas about the auditorium. Tom, if you look at what's going on in other communities, many combination auditorium, gymnasiums, etc., almost become community rec centers down the road because they're used all the time. So there's a lot of possibility here, but we need to right size that auditorium, not just say, well, we have 575 seats now, so we want the same. We need to right size the classrooms because that may scale back that building. And I want answers to these questions. The taxpayer is owed answers to these questions. And they've been sitting there since February, and we are almost, how many months later now? 6, 8 months later. I think I deserve some answers. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Elodia. And we are recording all of these questions, and we will provide answers in the near future. Before I go to the Q&A, I just want to recognize again that there are also many of the town councilors here. I mentioned earlier that Lisa Feltner had a very important other meeting to go to. Councilor Anthony Donato is here. Councilor Anthony Palumba is here. Councilor Bays is here. And Councilor Picciarelli is also on the committee. So Christy, if you want to do some of these questions that we started out with may not be relevant here right at the moment on design and things, but if you want to pick out some of the questions, like if you would mind asking some of them and getting some answers from Scott possibly.
Okay. Let's see. I will, as you said, we will be sure to record all of them, but I will jump around and try and touch on things that I don't think we've touched on. Just the first one was about increasing green space on Marshall as much as possible instead of preserving common street setbacks. I do think you've touched on it a little bit, but.
Yeah, I think that, again, some of those are very much further down in the design process.
Yeah, same with bike lanes, which was the next question. Let's see.
The primary entrance one.
Yep. Two-way. Okay. Where is the primary entrance for academics? Or is there one or several?
I think that we would propose several for a variety of different reasons. We want to keep everything flexible. I'm hearing an echo, I'm sorry.
Can you just make sure everybody's muted, please?
I'm looking, I don't see any unmutes.
Okay.
We want to keep entry and exit to the building flexible while still maintaining building security, but we show an access point on Spring Street, thinking primarily that's for walkers, not necessarily the primary drop-off point. We likely will have the ability for a student to walk Marshall and come into the building at some point, to walk Common and come into the building at some point. But we know that we'll obviously have to allow students to come from Columbia across the bridge, but there's not, at this point in time, there's not one single primary access point. We've talked about creating those access points, potentially on all facades, depending on how we want to structure building safety and security.
Thank you.
I'm just going to take a section of a question from David Leon.
Yeah, let's go. That's important.
Yep. Okay, so please provide thought as to the placing of the field off Common versus off the residential Columbia Street. That's part 1. 2, please help us understand the bridge use by anyone disabled. First impression is that that is a lot of expanse to travel with mobility impairments. And then the last is really mitigating noise, but a lot of it was noted during construction, yes, which we'll be dealing with much more later. So maybe those first 2, Scott?
Sure. The bridge is made accessible via elevator on each end of it. So depending on where you're coming from and where you're going to, you might potentially have to navigate an elevator to get to the floor level you want. But the bridge is there to keep students and any visitors from having to cross Common Street. It's there for access, safe access, and a passageway across Common Street. But it will be fully accessible in that there'll be elevator access to get to it. And then with regard to the green space on the cemetery side of the proposed building, the reason for that is the location of the existing high school, and the fact that if we want to tuck parking into that lowest level and hide it, we need the building to be on this edge of the site where the grade is lower and it's already excavated into the side of the hill, versus on this side of the site where we'd have to elevate the building and you would see an obvious parking garage underneath that building. So that's some of the reason why the building is located on Columbia Street. Even in some of the other options where we located the building off of Columbia Street with field space or green space between Columbia Street and the building, one of the criticisms of those schemes was that in the event of students arriving or being dropped off at the building, there's a substantial outdoor navigation that takes place before they can even get to their building. So those are some of the reasons. We certainly have variations on other options that place the green space on the Columbia Street side, but for a variety of different reasons. There were challenges and negative aspects of that the committee talked about in those discussions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just note Barry Gilbane from 19 Marshall also noted about the 4-story building on Phillips, noting about the historic district and questioned about a 2-story, more of a 2-story profile. So I believe we answered that one live, but just wanted to acknowledge. Laura Siegel, who was having audio problems earlier, actually had the same question as Cooper about student input on designs, so that was good that we covered that. I think Leo Martin had a question about the footbridge and the size, so I believe we just touched on that. One question was, is it possible to move the district administration to another site, noting the old police station? Peter Santola was asked if anyone knew how many stories the new Belmont High School has. I don't know if anyone.
I don't think we have that answer.
Okay. Next question, Carolyn Bays. Where is the WCA TV going to be located?
we currently have that program within the high school, within the newly proposed high school.
Kristen Patterson asked, when is the next community meeting? At this time, I could say we don't know that, but we expect to have another one in the coming month or so, within month or months. And those I would like to note for everyone. The Watertown Building for the Future site, when you get to that landing page, it's very simple. There's a link that takes you right to agendas and presentations, so you can watch past presentations also. But also you can click on the high school, which has its own project website, and we put the advertisement for those community forums right on the homepage. So, David Leon, is there a proposed traffic / parking? Where will cars enter and exit? I believe we touched on that. Elodia made her note about showing overlays with the buildings, massing scale, etc. The academic looms over the homes. So I believe we touched on that. Gina Brennan I believe she's saying, what is the time frame with this design? Not certain. What is the time frame with this design? I guess that goes back to the summary schedule that we are in the preferred schematic phase. So really right now, the focus is getting to one preferred option, and then we submit to the MSBA on December 29th. There we're showing all the study work that we've done over the past months to lead to the preferred option. And then we'll be kicking off schematic design of that option. So hopefully that helps explain, which really will develop through the first half of 2021.
She may be also asking length of construction.
Oh, what is the time frame with this design? So the duration, this was 60 months also, right, Scott?
This one is in all the 3D scenarios. So all the 4 variations on 3D tonight are between 3 years and 3.5 years. It was the
oh yes, sorry.
Option 1 scenarios building on the existing high school site that extended 5 years and beyond.
That's right. So 3.5 years. Thank you. Next, Elizabeth Newsom. I hope that townspeople will understand and respect that the school committee and architects are continuously monitoring the conditions concerning the number of students occupying the building. The occupancy of the building is a very specific number that is taken into consideration in regard to the building code and the educational program in order to build the new high school. I hope that there will be an understanding regarding this and our need for space in times of COVID, for example. Okay, Leanne Hammonds. Will there be any parking spaces on the academic building site for visitors, disabled spaces? If so, how many? So other than the parking underneath.
We would likely be introducing some visitor parking and some handicap parking on the academic building side, but it would only be to service those 2 purposes, because we know that the site is limited in total available area. So it wouldn't be more than just the parking to service visitors and then accessibility on that side.
Thank you. So this is good. Barbara Ruskin was able to type in her questions here. She was having audio problems. So let me see, there's a few I'll summarize here. I am shocked at the size of the academic building. Do we have the student numbers to require this size? And the massing could be more neighborhood friendly by using variable of heights.
In her next, and she's continuing in her next comment.
Oh, need variable heights for the areas abutting the houses. Do you want to just, let's just take that first and then I'll keep going because it's a longer part. But this is designed to 720 students, correct, Scott?
That is correct.
Okay. So continuing on with Barbara's comments, this is really terrible for neighbors. Elodia is correct on all counts. Harvey and Franklin talked about open space. Mike Petrie, an architect, says we need to mitigate the size on Spring and Marshall. Definitely use glass, not the typical brick, because the arsenal is brick. I would like to see some of the academic moved over to the WHS site. The teacher, Kristen Patterson, has a great point about navigating classes and spaces in a 4-story building. Sorry that this is so discombobulated. I can't speak, but I feel that my house has been moved into the middle of Watertown Square instead of being part of a neighborhood. I'm also concerned about utilities and microwaves and sounds. And then lastly, she asked, did you say that the massing has to be in by November? It needs to be in by December 29th. So the preferred schematic has to be submitted to the MSBA. So the preferred option by December 29th. And we do need some time to prepare that submission. So a decision does need to be made in the November or very early December timeframe.
Okay, we've answered all the Q&As, and again, we will get some of the ones that weren't answered onto the frequently asked questions section. Correct, Christy?
Correct.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from any of the members of the audience, the community? Anybody from the panel that has a question or a comment? Scott, do you have anything else?
I think I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. That's a lot of good feedback. I think that we hear it. We're working already based on the comments last night to variations on what we've put forward, and we'll just keep developing massing and various options for the building committee and the community to take a look at. It's the input is very much appreciated.
Christy, do you have anything else?
I do not. Thank you very much. Thank you all for participating.
Dee Dee? Did you have anything?
No, I just want to say how excited we are just to keep moving forward. And again, I do appreciate the feedback that we've received. And, you know, we have a lot of work to do ahead in terms of really designing the best program possible for our students in Watertown. And it really depends a lot on that feedback that we're getting from the community. So thank you.
Okay, Christy?
Sorry, I did have one more thing. I'm sorry I keep sounding like I'm plugging the website, but I do ask that if people can put in their memory banks, Watertown Building for the Future, and then click the link of the high school. We try very hard to keep that up to date, and we want everyone to feel like they have access to information. The education plan is posted there that Superintendent Galston noted. A lot of information is there. We update the summary schedule in real time as things happen. So I'm done plugging. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I want to thank the project team for, again, a great presentation. And I will say that there were a lot of good comments tonight. We really take them very seriously. And a theme to me that seems to have come out from tonight and last night is, you know, the size of the building replacing the Phillips School. So I think, you know, we will be looking at some other options to see what we can do. And I think all of the feedback tonight is very helpful, and looking forward to continuing this discussion with not only the community, but the building committee and staff and everyone that needs to help make the best decision possible for the citizens of this community. So thank you all again this evening, and we'll see you soon.